vous attend nombreux sur la suite des rendez-vous du festival. Merci encore d'être présents et puis bonne conférence.
Hi. Bonjour. Will it be problematic if we speak in English for a lot of this presentation?
Est-ce que c'est problématique s'il parle en anglais pour la plupart des
Okay, we'll pause every once in a while, and if there's anything, please feel free to ask for clarification if there's anything that you don't understand.
And you can ask in French. I speak a little, but not well enough to give a talk.
Hi and welcome. Thank you for coming today. We're going to speak a little bit about our practice in general. Both Cloud, which is viewable very close. Have any of you seen it so far already? Great. Okay, it's much better at night, so make sure you go and see it at night. We built it specifically to be viewed at night, but during the day it's something else, so that's all right as well.
Yeah, so we're going to go through just some of the work in our collaborative practice and a bit in our independent practices as well, just chronologically, so we'll kind of start from some early days.
Ils vont présenter leurs différents projets en fait de façon chronologique pour que vous ayez une vue complète de tout ce qu'ils peuvent faire.
So we built an entirely new presentation for you, so enjoy. We began working with light through film. So film was something that I was working with before I began working with Wayne. In art school, I was making rocket ships and intimate spaces that were comfortable, and spaces where you could be alone or together with very few people. That was something that persisted after art school as well. This is a collaboration with our roommate, actually, who's another artist named Shorty. And we would climb up the ladder into the space and lay underneath the stars, which were, of course, just holes drilled in plywood. And then this is another work that was also very much about intimacy. We were invited with one other person to lie on a bed, and there were speakers set into the pillows. And there was about a 10-minute video and audio piece that was worked very directly into the space, so dealing very much with comfort in intimate spaces.
Donc Kékine à la base travaillait beaucoup sur tout ce qui est la lumière, l'intimité et créer en fait des espaces où on pouvait se retrouver soit seul, soit à plusieurs. Donc là c'est un des projets qu'elle a créé où on peut être à deux. Il y a en fait un son qui passe dans les oreillers qu'on peut écouter en même temps qu'il y a de la lumière projetée au-dessus.
And I guess I come at the arts from a much more informal background. Technically, I have training as a machinist, which is sort of steel fine fabrication with a lathe and milling machine. But also, I've been to school for music, so as a jazz guitarist, I play all sorts of music when I'm back home. Through living with an arts collective for about 5 or 6 years was my more artistic education.
We met in a home in suburbia. So Calgary, where we're from in Canada, is sort of infamous for its endless suburbs. It has so much space to expand, and so it does. So you get a lot of these houses that are cheaply built, and they're built out into the prairies, so into the suburban sprawl. The artist collective that we lived with had taken one of these homes, which are sort of the epitome of mundane, everyday North American living, and converted it into a space for artists. So there was a gallery inside. They did crazy things in the yard, like build a 2-story cardboard mountain and burn it down for a music video. At one point, they completely dug up the lawn and had trench warfare, where they fought in the trenches, in the lawn, in the grass, with water balloons, so reenacting World War II. But World War I. Oh my God, my history is showing. Yeah, so it was an interesting space. But Wayne and I met when we were living with this collective of artists.
Donc, ils sont originaires de Calgary, qui est au Canada. Ils ont rencontré quelqu'un là-bas qui faisait partie d'un collectif en fait, d'art. Ils avaient une maison en plein milieu de la campagne et où ils ont expérimenté différentes choses. Il y avait en partie une galerie d'art à l'intérieur de la maison. Ils ont expérimenté des choses pour reproduire par exemple la Première Guerre mondiale en mettant des ballons d'eau en dessous de la terre pour reproduire les jets, ce genre de choses.
So a lot of our first collaborations, as Caitlin mentioned, were in film. And a lot of what would happen is Caitlin would do a lot of filmmaking and I would compose and record the music and score for the films. And so this is sort of the beginning of our fascination with light, as film is a medium of light, of course.
At some point, film became too rectangular and too flat for us. And so we tried to expand, literally into expanded cinema. And so we started working with crystals and more three-dimensional spaces. This was a work that we made. It was about a 10-minute long performance with live music and crystal manipulation. And then after that, at some point, well, this is sort of going back in time a little bit, but this was a Western we made together, a Western film. The score is amazing. You can listen to it on our video page.
Donc ils se sont beaucoup intéressés en fait à la partie filmique qui à la base était à la base de leur travail. Donc là c'est un western qu'ils ont créé tous les deux et il y a le son qui est disponible sur leur page vidéo si jamais vous voulez aller voir ce que ça donne.
Et la vidéo complète.
But simultaneous to this, living at this collective with all of these crazy people, we began experimenting a little bit more with, in physical ways, shall we say. Perhaps you were more familiar with that.
A little more involved with this. This is a project we collaborated with this group that we lived with, the collective. This was in Toronto, and there were a series of houses that were going to be knocked down, and so there were a group of artists invited to just use the materials in the houses and use the houses as a place to make art, cut holes in the wall. And we made a sort of a post-apocalyptic shanty village in the backyard out of all the debris from the demolition.
Wayne and I built this tree house together.
Donc il y avait des maisons qui étaient supposées être détruites à Toronto et au lieu de les laisser à l'abandon, les artistes ont été invités à venir utiliser les matériaux qui font découvrir les maisons pour après reconstruire d'autres choses. Et là, dans le jardin en fait, des bâtiments, ils ont construit d'autres petites maisons à la base avec le matériel de base de l'autre maison.
And that led to another project in Calgary. So we enjoyed working so much in deconstructing specific buildings that when we had the opportunity to use a house in Calgary to do the same thing. This is 229 10A Street in Calgary. And this is it's one of those houses that no one will really miss in a lot of ways. It's very small. It was maybe built in the early 1900s. It was like 1912, I think. Full of asbestos, so it was sort of a problematic dwelling, and it was being demolished by the couple that had bought it. And as a wedding gift to this couple, their neighbors commissioned initially me to make an artwork on the lawn of the house, but we decided instead, having just come from Toronto and the Leona Drive project, that we would take the entire house and we would do what we did in Toronto, which was deconstruct it and then reconstruct it in different ways.
Donc c'est une maison qui avait à Calgary et le voisin de ce couple a décidé pour leur faire comme un cadeau pour leur mariage en fait de changer un peu l'espace à l'intérieur de leur maison. C'est une maison qui date des années 1910 en fait, qui était supposée aussi être démolie et du coup au lieu de tout démolir ils ont déconstruit pour reconstruire un nouvel espace tout vaguement dans la maison.
Part of what's exciting about sort of pre-demolition opportunities like this for us is the ability to intersect the spaces that you normally can't. So in this case, we've cut a hole in the floor and inserted a slide from the playground. So you slide down through the living room floor, through a bathroom, into a closet in the basement.
Donc ce qui est assez sympathique au niveau de ces projets, c'est qu'ils peuvent construire et déconstruire comme ils le sentent. Là, ils ont fait un trou en fait dans la maison pour pouvoir y mettre un toboggan pour que les gens puissent aller d'une pièce à l'autre jusqu'en dessous.
This was where we discovered that besides the participants, there is no audience. This project was very public, despite being in a private space. We invited people to paint on the walls, and that was a catastrophe. But there were many, many people who came, and it was a broad demographic of people, so not necessarily people who would just, visit a gallery or participate in an arts context, but all kinds of people. One of the artists, Lane, despite his intentions, his work was turned into a wishing well. And little magical moments like that, I think, really seduced us to having this broad audience.
Donc dans ce projet, ce qui les a beaucoup intéressés, c'est qu'en fait c'était un projet public, mais qui était dans un espace privé, et du coup toutes les personnes de différentes catégories sociales ont pu se retrouver et participer ensemble au même projet.
So that brings us the first edition of Cloud, which we made originally in 2012 for a new launch in Calgary. It was their first edition. And the commission came about as a commission to make a piece of performance art. Neither of us are really conventional performance artists, and so part of the idea was to make a piece where the audience is turned into the performers, or they are turned into the performers. So Cloud becomes like almost a giant puppet for them to control, and they create a show by standing on the stage and interacting with the piece for people further away to watch.
Mm-hmm. We'll come back to that though. So this is the substructure of Cloud, which Wayne welded. So we built it all ourselves, and this, you'll see shortly that even the edition that's shown here, we primarily built ourselves, which is something that we like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important for us to sort of do all the fabrication, or as much as possible with the project. You can just change your ideas as you need to, as you see something developing. You know, compared to when you sketch out a sculpture, it's sort of hard to grasp every aspect of it. So if you're building it, you get a little more of an intimate relationship.
Alors, ce que vous devez savoir, c'est qu'il y a eu deux éditions en fait, du Cloud. Donc, ça a été construit à la base en 2012 pour un festival qui s'appelle Nuit Blanche au Canada. Et en fait, le projet qu'il y a à Place Hoche, c'était un projet plus petit en fait, de la première version qui a été éditée. Et ce que disait Wayne, c'est qu'en fait, il trouve ça très intéressant en fait, de participer activement à la production de leur projet. Donc c'est lui qui a construit la structure de base de Cloud. Et après, du coup, il trouvait ça plus logique. Parce que comme ça, il peut voir le développement du projet dans sa globalité et du coup de savoir ce qu'il peut changer ou améliorer en voyant les choses avec du recul.
The project, you can see, the original one was built much more out of repurposed, burnt out incandescent light bulbs. The version here is not as many burnt out light bulbs. And unfortunately that was because we built it in Moscow, where perhaps it's not as common to save incandescent light bulbs, but also it's much less common to be able to acquire them once you can save them. So the one in Calgary was much more repurposed.
Donc la première édition, elle a été faite majoritairement d'ampoules recyclées qui ont été utilisées. Par contre, pour la version qu'il y a à Place Hoche, comme elle a été construite à Moscou, ils n'ont pas pu majoritairement mettre des ampoules recyclées, mais du coup, ils ont quand même essayé d'utiliser au maximum des ampoules à incandescence qui en fait sont remplacées maintenant par les ampoules LED.
Yeah, so just to sort of recap what I was saying again, in this sense, we built a round platform for the performers to stand on like a stage, and then they're very well lit by the sculpture, so it becomes a performance piece for the audience. And in our mind, the piece isn't really complete until there are people engaging with it and animating it. So as an object, it's not a complete piece of art.
L'idée de Cloud, en fait, c'est que ce soit une performance artistique qui soit faite par les personnes qui arrivent et qui allument ou éteignent le nuage, et pas que ce soit juste une performance artistique pratiquée juste par des artistes. En fait, tout le monde est invité à participer au projet et à allumer le nuage.
So the first version is slightly bigger than the version here, only by maybe a foot or two, but it's just a little bit too big to ship. And so shortly after revealing this work, which was only built for one night only, we built it in Nuit Blanche, not intending, necessarily to show it anywhere else. It would have been, it was lovely that it led to future exhibitions, but it wasn't initially designed. However, the piece seemed to capture the imagination of people in Calgary at least, and it's also very photogenic, which was something that we did intend as part of the work, coming from a film background. And so, almost overnight, it was appearing on blogs internationally.
Yeah.
En fait, à la base, ils n'ont pas fait ce projet pour que ce soit exposé dans différents pays sur tous les continents. C'était fait que pour Nuit Blanche, et ils se sont rendus compte que les gens trouvaient ça très photogénique et ont commencé à l'exposer partout sur des blogs internationaux. Et c'est là qu'ils ont eu des demandes en fait, pour pouvoir transporter ce projet ailleurs.
And that was how we ended up in Russia.
So this is the temporary pavilion for the Garage Center for Contemporary Culture.
Which is the Garage Center for Contemporary Art.
That's right, and this is in Gorky Park in Moscow. And they had us, instead of shipping the piece, which was apparently going to cost $350,000 to take it from Canada to Russia, because they would have to charter a jumbo jet, they asked if we would just come build a second edition. So we agreed, and this was sort of the start of the touring for Cloud.
c'est là qu'ils ont commencé à faire la deuxième édition du Cloud. C'était à Moscou. En fait, ça coûtait trop cher d'emmener tout le projet jusqu'à Moscou, à peu près plus de 3 000 $ pour s'emporter jusque là-bas. Du coup, ils leur ont demandé carrément de construire là-bas une autre édition en fait, du projet.
This is the substructure of the piece that you'll see outside. This is the same piece. So Wayne is welding it again in the back area of the gallery. Safety is not a big priority in Russia, so it was a highly unventilated space, an unconventional metal shop. And we learned a lot about how different cultures deal with physical problems.
Yeah, there's certainly just a very can-do worker attitude we found in Russia, which is kind of fascinating, sometimes alarming.
By comparison, a lot of this work would be done with machines in other countries.
Ils ont pu se rendre compte en fait de la façon dont les gens peuvent participer activement en fait tous les problèmes physiques qui ont pu se poser de construire une pièce telle que celle-là, et du coup toutes les différentes réactions en fait des gens, et ils se sont rendus compte qu'en fait en Russie les gens sont très travailleurs et n'hésitent pas à donner des idées.
We've also found, and perhaps Moscow was our first sort of foray into this, but cloud is a fascinating barometer for social spaces in different cities and different attitudes towards social space. So even yesterday, when cloud was revealed here, we noticed how shyly people approached it. And people have been very gentle here by comparison to a lot of other countries that we've traveled to, despite what the organizers might think. People have been very kind towards the sculpture here. In Russia, it was sort of interesting for us to see how differently the work was treated by comparison to Canada. For us, at least, having the work in a gallery context instead of outside, having the audiences be maybe more children than at the Nuit Blanche, and also because this was a ticketed event, and so only people who have money could afford to go, the complete context changed and was altered for us. The other thing is that perhaps in Russia people were a little bit, I don't mean to in any way stereotype, but they were perhaps a little bit more tentative towards interacting with the work of art.
Donc en Russie, ils ne pouvaient pas l'exposer dans un lieu accessible au public. C'était un projet en plus qui pouvait être accessible que si on avait des tickets, donc du coup ça ne touche pas la même population. Et il y a beaucoup d'enfants qui sont venus en fait avec leurs parents majoritairement. Et ils ont pu voir, en fait c'est un bon baromètre pour se rendre compte comment les personnes réagissent au niveau de l'espace quand ils ont un projet artistique au milieu de leur espace public. Et là, du coup, quelqu'un me disait que c'était intéressant de voir que les gens en Russie sont assez timides et n'osent pas vraiment interagir avec le nuage par peur un peu de ce genre de projets qui sont implantés comme ça dans des milieux qui ne sont pas en fait accessibles.
And this was also where we began our love-hate relationship with gallery spaces. You could say the house project was perhaps in its own way a critique of regular or normal arts contexts. But as soon as you're in a gallery space, I think, or at least for us, we yearn for free public space. And when we're in a free public space, we yearn for clean white cubes. And so it's always, each one balances the other.
Yeah, there is an interesting sort of disparity between the two spaces as well, where in a public realm, no one is going to take the time usually to read a didactic or find the information about your work. So if it has something to say, it really has to be strong and speak for itself, or people will find interpretations for it. But in the gallery, you can get away with a lot more critical context and critical text, which is really engaging at times.
Donc ils ont pu voir la différence en fait entre le fait d'exposer soit dans une galerie, soit dans un espace public. Et en fait, il disait que dans une galerie, on est beaucoup plus amené à recevoir des critiques en fait de la part des journalistes, ce genre de choses. Alors que quand c'est dans l'espace public, les gens s'intéressent plus au côté interprétatif en fait de leur art.
And so began Mercredi. This is a work by two artists. I'll show a number of works that aren't ours, but they'll always say the name of the artist who made them. So please note, credit where credit is due. But this was the beginning of Mercredi. And Mercredi is, it's now a curatorial collective that I'm part of. There are 8 of us who run Mercredi right now. Mercredi is a curatorial collective working in pre-demolition spaces. The reason that we became a collective was because we were given 9 houses, 3 garages, and a greenhouse, and invited to turn these spaces into arts context, or at least we acquired access to these spaces and decided that they would be contemporary art spaces for a very short period of time before they were demolished.
Donc Mercredi qui est du coup un collectif d'artistes dans lequel Kékine fait partie, qui est chargé en fait de changer des espaces qui sont censés être démolis dans des espaces artistiques.
And these are the names of the curators involved, so I'm one of 8. Yeah.
Sure. The project takes up an entire city block, and there are over 150 artists that were invited to participate. And again, it speaks to a lot of ideas of spaces that are going to be destroyed and demolition and gentrification, not necessarily directly, but it's certainly in that subtext. And so each house was curated independently and had sort of themes within the spaces.
We were free to do as we pleased in these spaces. So many of the artists could penetrate walls and floors and ceilings. Some of them, this group, for example, took all the mirrors from all of the houses and made a giant infinity room. And we could paint on anything we wanted to. This was a whole family of artists that converted a space into an underwater, it was essentially an underwater forest. With mermaids, and you could fish through a hole in the ceiling. So you could lower a fishing rod through this hole, and they would attach something to the fishing rod, and then you'd reel it back up again.
Donc une pièce qui a été conçue en fait comme un monde sous-marin où les gens pouvaient carrément mettre une canne à pêche pour aller prendre en fait ce qu'il y avait en dessous à partir du plafond.
This was the greenhouse at Mercredi, and Blaine Shorty converted the space into a forest. He recycled everything. All the boards you see in this giant trunk, they were the planter boxes in the greenhouse space. So he recycled everything right down to the screws. He kept all of the screws. And then he cut a hole in the wall so that you could sit out on this little balcony. And this began our conversation regarding do-it-yourself safety, or at what point you can invite the public into a space and how safe you need to make it before it becomes too didactic and so disallows their essential freedoms. There were many conversations back and forth as to whether or not we should put a railing on this tiny platform, and we ultimately decided that a railing would be too much, and that in inviting people to decide for themselves how safe they felt on this short platform, they were essentially being given a freedom that we hope Mercredi symbolizes on a grander scale.
Donc Kékine du coup se demandait par rapport à l'art, il faut aussi se demander le côté un peu sécurité, savoir ce qu'on peut faire ou ce qu'on ne peut pas faire, ce qui permet aux gens de se sentir en sécurité ou non. Et du coup c'est pour ça qu'ils ont rajouté une espèce de plateforme pour continuer le truc qu'il y avait dans le mur, pour savoir que les gens puissent se rendre compte s'ils étaient capables d'aller au-delà du trou ou s'ils préféraient rester en recul et ne pas un peu risquer de tomber.
Wayne and I took slide. Do you want to speak to this?
Sure.
You did more work than I did.
Yeah, I suppose so. This was another installation with a slide where this was an old slide that was being thrown out from a playground, and we were able to install it where you would exit on the top floor of the house, go outside of the house, and then in again through the main floor and go through a couple turns. And it was quite steep and fast. There were certainly a lot of screams and people really flying out, but no injuries, which is great. So again, it deals with that line of finding the sort of what can be safe and where to find the limits.
And this project was much less about budget because Mercredi, the very first Mercredi, was completely unfunded, so we had no money at all. We, however, did manage to raise quite a large amount of money to pay all of our artists, but it was all through crowdfunding and a little bit through government grants. So that being said, people had to beg, borrow, and steal their materials, and we asked artists to, as much as possible, use the houses themselves for material.
Donc la première version de Mercredi, en fait, c'était pas du tout, il n'y avait pas du tout d'argent donné pour participer à payer les artistes. Donc majoritairement c'était les dons en fait qui étaient faits par les quêtes au niveau du public, qui ont permis de payer la majorité des artistes et aussi du matériel qui était nécessaire. Donc ils ont demandé à utiliser le maximum de ce qu'il y avait déjà dans les maisons pour pouvoir les réutiliser à l'intérieur. Et il y a certains artistes en fait, qui ont carrément été amenés à devoir voler du matériel autre part pour pouvoir participer. Et il y a des choses qui ont été récupérées. Donc là c'était un toboggan qui a été récupéré d'une aire de jeu pour être utilisé à l'intérieur de la maison, qui lie en fait l'extérieur à l'intérieur de la maison.
We also became intimately reacquainted with the public as far as it goes as an entity. We had many music shows, and music shows tend to bring, a certain type of wildness out in people. We also had some problems that we were accused of causing in the city itself. So we had some works of art that were vandalized. We had people kick down the doors to houses at night because they knew that no one was living in them. We also had some really magical things happen. So there was one house that was, this was a graffiti house that we commissioned. There was one house in the middle of the block that wasn't involved in Mercredi directly. And because they liked the project so much, they hired their own graffiti artist to make his own mural on the house, which ended up being like a quite beautiful, unintentional addition to Mercredi as a total thing.
Ils ont eu aussi des petits problèmes liés au fait de ce festival. En fait, il y a des personnes qui ont vandalisé ce qu'ils avaient fait et qui les ont un peu accusés aussi de générer ce genre de problème. Et il y a des personnes qui ont tellement adoré le projet qui en fait ont décidé d'engager leur propre artiste pour colorer une des maisons qui n'était pas prévue en fait à la base dans le projet et qui était au milieu du projet avec les autres maisons. Et du coup, de créer lui-même sa propre.
I really like this quote because I feel like it, for me at least, it sums up Mercredi. The radicality of artist positions within an institution is contingent upon the museum's willingness to self-implode. So how daring are you willing to be as an art space? And how daring how daring can you be in terms of the opportunities that you create for artists? Are you willing to jeopardize yourself in order to make spaces for artists to have as much freedom as possible? On the other side of that spectrum.
Yeah, so shortly after that, this is an installation we made for a gay bar in Chicago, and this was one of the only commercial commissions we've ever done. It was a great team to work with, and so this was sort of an adaptation of a cloud, of course, but without pull strings, since they wouldn't last in a bar. And it's activated by motion sensors as people move through the space. And yeah, it was just a great experience to sort of work with the team down there.
And the idea, as you can see, is a progression on cloud. So we were asking ourselves, can this be a permanent installation? What do we sacrifice in order to make it a permanent installation? Also, what's it like to make commercial work? Because we've never made commercial work before. It's certainly not our focus. We prefer free public space. But there are certain freedoms that come with that. And this work is still installed in Chicago. So if any of you happen to be in Chicago anytime soon, go check it out.
C'est une version en fait qui a été demandée à Chicago par un bar gay. Donc ils ont dû modifier en fait le projet parce que c'est impossible de mettre des choses qui sont accessibles qu'on puisse tirer pour allumer ou éteindre le nuage. Du coup ils ont dû revoir leur fonctionnement et en fait au lieu d'être allumés par les différentes personnes grâce à des ficelles, en fait là c'était en fonction du mouvement des gens que les lumières s'allument.
We're showing these again in chronological order to give you some idea of how we sort of progressed. Mercredi's second project was called Wing, and it was in an old sandstone school. There was a wing of the school being demolished. This space is currently being sort of refurbished as an arts center, an arts incubator in Calgary. And we were given the wing, just one wing, to work with. We invited about 35 teams to create work inside this space. So Wayne and I made the sign, and that's all we did as artists. The rest was curatorial. The sign itself is made out of reappropriated fluorescent lights from the building. So it was more institutional than Mercredi proper, but that also gave us certain materials that we wouldn't have had in spaces, like lockers, for example.
C'est un projet qui était en fait la continuité de Mercredi. Leur deuxième édition. compétition. Et là, en fait, on leur a donné l'opportunité de changer une école qui avait été démolie, donc en centre culturel pour l'art. Et du coup, ils ont pu utiliser des nouveaux matériaux qu'ils n'avaient pas pu utiliser avant, comme les casiers. Et ils ont aussi pu travailler avec les lumières qui étaient directement disponibles dans l'école.
This project, which was called the Girl Gang Dance Party, reappropriated the female bathroom, the ladies' bathroom, as a place for female empowerment, shall we say. So there was a selfie washroom, there was a bathroom that you went into to cry, there was a heartbreak bathroom, so each stall had something different that you could visit. The hallways and each classroom were used in a different way by different groups of artists. So each classroom is essentially a small solo show by different groups of artists. And then we also had musicians come in. It's something that engages people more directly with the space and enlivens the space. So it's nice to have music as much as possible. There was also this element of, like, what would you do if you had complete access to do whatever you wanted to your school? So there was a little bit of instruction involved in Phantom Wing as well, a little bit of anarchy, and quite a bit of performance and installation. This again is the idea of no matter what you're criticizing, you're always part of the thing that you're criticizing. So this thought that you're never completely separate from the context that you're reflecting. And so our next work, at least chronologically, was a work based in downtown Calgary in the middle of the winter.
So when we were asked to make a work for this type of space, we wanted to consider the things that are sort of absent from a situation like that. So in Canada in the winters it gets very cold and very dark, and as artists working in the world of light art at times, it seemed, although perhaps hubristic, also like a natural move to try and recreate the sun, the heat and the aesthetic and the warmth of the sun that you miss in the winter so much.
So we worked with an engineer, because you have to if you're working in a public space like that, and also a CAD drawer. And we tried to capture what we think is the most beautiful type of sunlight, which is that sunlight right before dusk, when you have that perfect golden hour. So I'm going to show you a video. It was only appropriate to make a movie.
Après avoir pris un soleil du coup pour au milieu d'hiver à Toronto, ils ont décidé de changer le côté du projet et du coup de commencer à faire le côté plus lumière.
So this was for a residency we were a part of in Kentucky, in the United States. And this is an interactive sculpture, a bit of a continuation from materials, but departure otherwise. It's tough. I think you can only really successfully make something interactive when it's the right thing to do. And if you force an interaction on the work, sometimes it actually will take away from it. And we've sort of had some successes and challenges in dealing with that, most certainly.
Might as well show you actually one other video.
En fait, ce qui intéresse majoritairement Wayne Garrett, c'est en fait de travailler dans l'interactivité, c'est que les gens puissent participer directement au projet artistique. Le problème, c'est que autant ça peut mettre d'un côté leur art en valeur, autant d'un autre côté, si les gens n'ont pas envie d'interagir avec, ça leur rend beaucoup moins esthétiquement parlant et non seulement culturellement parlant intéressant, mais si les gens ont vraiment envie d'interagir.
We'll show you this work because photos of it are crap, so video is the only way to actually show you.
This is all made out of recycled wine bottles.
We didn't drink them. So a bellwether is an omen. It's the idea that you can see into the future, which is maybe a little bit ambitious. But a bell cannot ring without some sort of external force acting on it. And that's something that I think we're quite interested in, is this idea of external forces acting on various things. Yeah. So, question, should museums be places of participation? And the answer, at least given by Philip Kaiser, who used to be director of the Museum, is if participation is narcissistic, then no. If participation equals pure entertainment, then no. If participation is considered to be a critical category of establishing knowledge in a discursive environment of others, then yes. And that's something that we think about often, like what is the role of participation or interactivity? And it's very trendy right now to be interactive artists. And anytime there's a trend, I think it's good to be at least aware of that overall bird's eye view, so as not to be participating too blindly in anything that's popular. Oh, this GIF is not going to work. Yeah, we'll just tell you about it then.
Sure, so this is a more recent piece that we completed in June of this year, and it's currently on display in Istanbul. It's an installation we made out of 14,000 repurposed eyeglasses lenses. So the piece is an installation for the facade of Para Museum in Istanbul as a commemorative installation for their 10th anniversary.
The work is not interactive. It's a kinetic work, and it's activated by the wind. So we took eyeglass lenses that existed already, we broke them, we drilled them, and we strung them up, sort of like beading a giant tapestry. And the work utilizes all types of prescriptions. So these lenses all did belong to people before we got our hands on them.
And just to be clear, the lenses were sourced by a group that does repurpose glasses to countries in need, developing nations and this sort of thing. But they do get a lot of prescriptions that they can't fit to people if they get complex prescriptions, bifocals, progressives like this. And so a lot of them end up being recycled for raw materials. And in the case of the lenses, they get turned into paint for highways after reflection.
So we were considering the idea of the role of a museum within culture, and the idea of it being a lens for culture itself, this focuser, and this method of reviewing the world around us, essentially. Within that, though, if you make a giant lens out of many little lenses, I think there's also this idea that we have together a collective vision that's made up of many, many incremental smaller parts. And so that was sort of what we were considering in making this work, which was called See, Saw, and we'll show you a video of it as well.
Donc ça, c'est un projet qui a été fait à l'aide de différents verres en fait, de lunettes qu'ils ont récupérées, et aussi de prescriptions qui ont été données à des personnes qui étaient trop complexes pour que des opticiens puissent leur donner la prescription utile, et du coup, les lunettes n'étaient plus valables par rapport à la prescription donnée. Du coup, ils ont réutilisé pour aussi l'idée de voir un musée comme une vision générale de ce qui se passe dans le monde, mais aussi chaque personne en fait participe activement au fait que cette vision puisse être accessible à son public.
So one thing that we talk about with this piece and Cloud is, again, the concept of social dynamics, and so all these individual parts that can work together to create a bigger movement, and that's sort of being a reflection of people and societies working together or working in chaos.
Don't worry, these videos are all very short. We make them for exactly these purposes, but this is a kinetic work, so it's nice to actually see it. And this is still happening simultaneously with Mercredi. So Mercredi still has projects going on. In June, at the same time that we were in Istanbul, building saw the rest of the curatorial collective was at home, making sure that another group of artists, 50 artists this time, could have access to a derelict car wash in downtown Calgary, which was a completely different context yet again.
Voilà, ils étaient à Istanbul en train de travailler sur le projet ainsi. Il y avait le projet Mercredi qui continuait du coup chez eux à Calgary, et du coup ils ont fait en sorte qu'il y ait 50 personnes qui puissent quand même travailler sur ce projet. Et du coup en fait c'était une station de l'aéronautique pour les voitures qui cette fois a dû être habilitée au projet.
Artists approach this project in a number of different ways. Some of them were quite literal. So this is a ghost car wash where the artist designed a screen where they could project on smoke. It was between two thin slices of vapor barrier. So they had about 6 inches that were just filled repeatedly by pressing a button. The audience members were invited to press a button. So they filled the screen with smoke, and then they projected cars as if they were still being used, as if the car wash was still being used for its traditional purpose. These artists built a space where you could activate light and sound in a very intimate way through a keyboard. This is a beautiful piece. I don't know that they have any other documentation online, but it's a really lovely piece. Sandrine and Eric made a work that was called Shy Light, and it was very much about that idea of sometimes it's not a majority of people who will ever get to have an experience in a space. So if you're too loud, this light will hide. So it's just a very simple audio sensor. The louder you are in the space, the bigger the light will become. So the light would interact with various viewers, but only if they were patient enough to figure out what was going on with the minimal environment. And then this is a work by Peter Redikoff. It was a constantly sudsing sign. So this is the sign that was used for the car wash initially, and this is maybe 15 feet in the air, something like that.
About 5 meters.
And he wired up a system so that there was always soap that was floating out of this sign. It was a very complex work of engineering. And then, as always, bands were involved. This artist decided to essentially take Mercredi at its most essential value, and he reduced what was a room into 1 pallet worth of materials, and then he created a manual as if you could take this room, ship it elsewhere, and recreate it. So there's absolutely all the materials that you would need to build that room on a single pallet. And with this manual, theoretically, you could rebuild that room. Again, this was a very interesting space because it's not a space anyone will really miss. It was kind of shitty. It was a car wash, you know. And so the idea that someone would take this room and ship it elsewhere, pay for all the shipping, and then rebuild this space that it was sort of shot and rebuilt in the first place is sort of humorous. But it comes down to Mercredi's deepest essence, which is the thought that that cities are always changing. And that at their core, there is a lot of movement and there's a lot of flux that's happening. This is actually the ruins of the initial Mercredi project where we had 9 houses, 3 garages, and a greenhouse. And this is the artist standing on the ruin of the greenhouse where he had installed his work. Not that long before. I I like to show this image, but I think I forgot to tell this story. So Mercredi was initially created as a commemorative piece for a gallery called 809 Gallery, which was Calgary's first garage-based gallery space. So it's sort of a counterculture in Calgary, probably in North America, I'm sure here as well, of having gallery spaces in very alternative contexts. So people's basements, and living rooms, and garages, just like a garage band might practice in a garage. There were a number of galleries in Calgary that were based in garages. But because the houses around the garage were being knocked down, the garage was being knocked down too, the gallery was ending. And so that's where Mercredi initially came from. But ironically, the garage itself was the last building standing on the entire block. And so I like to think there's some sort of, I don't know, overall value to that space inherently, even though it's just a crappy garage.
Le projet à la base du coup était produit majoritairement dans des maisons et dans des garages. En fait là, quelque chose montrait, c'est un des garages qui est resté en fait. La maison a été détruite, le garage est resté et c'est en fait une belle image un peu côté ironique. En fait c'est la partie un peu inutilisée d'une maison et au final c'est ça qui reste du projet.
Ultimately everything, nature and culture as well, and thus man and his habitat are connected in an infinite diverse system of relationships. Every image of the past that is not recognized by the present as one of its own concerns threatens to disappear as the This is the idea that everything influences everything. And so you have that like collective that's created from many, many small parts, and the parts actually have much more influence over the collective than we think we have. And so this is like the political ideology behind things, including crowd. The thought that if you work together in concert, and sometimes in chaos, you can have some effect that's larger than each one of you individually.
Yeah, but the sort of the stagnancy you see in chaos where on the surface of cloud people are just interacting as individuals and only thinking about what they're doing and not working together. You don't see a lot of change happening, but it's when people sort of organize and coordinate that you see these movements happen in sculpture, just like the political systems and the social dynamics, where as people work together, you have a much greater power and potential.
Donc la tirade de cloud, c'est aussi que les gens puissent travailler ensemble pour allumer le nuage, parce que les gens, en fait, chaque personne est invitée à participer au projet, mais c'est en fait chaque petite personne qui participe à allumer le nuage qui fait que l'œuvre existe.
Of course, there are moments when we wonder how much effect any individual can possibly have when you get audiences like this. So this was in Bucharest not that long ago in April, and we wondered a little bit how much the art was actually being viewed at all, considering the size of the crowd and the voracious appetite of the people pulling on the strings below.
Yeah, this comes sort of back to the context of an artwork as well. I've spoken just briefly about the difference in context between gallery and public work. Once again, sometimes it can be a step removed even further to have public work versus public work for a festival setting. Maintenant is a nice creative context, and there are moments like this to have artistic discourse, but certainly in some cases it can be pure just candy and consumption.
We're working on a project now, we'll tell you about just a little bit. It's called The Deep Dark, and it's a series of projects about darkness. We decided that in order to explore light to its fullest, we had to at least take a look at its antithesis. Part of this was prompted by meeting a man named Professor Toby Cumberbatch, who's an engineer professor at University of New York City. And he is in the middle of a project called Social Light, which is essentially bringing light to developing nations, but beginning with rural Ghana, where they have no light, no artificial light, aside from kerosene lamps. And in speaking to him, we became hyper self-aware of the thought that you're, especially with things like crowd, where it is a beacon, it's very bright. We're spoiled in having this light, but it also has some very specific purposes and some intuitive languages that are involved in cities like this one, where, say, a green light means go, or blinking signage is something that you have to look at, but you can't look So light has some very specific powers, and we became quite interested in that. We spent the summer thinking about the effect of light on darkness and the effect of darkness on light, and how those reciprocal relationships impact each other.
So part of the idea with this piece was to make a light installation by which the darkness grows darker. So through contrast, you're able to highlight the absence of light. We started informing the piece just by performing interviews with various participants in the same residency and people who are part of the Arts Center on their experiences with darkness. And they were performed blindfolded so that you could really sort of become in tune with your feelings about darkness and your experiences.
And excuse the images of us. We didn't want to take photos of anyone while they were blindfolded. It felt like too much of a power dynamic, so we just took photos of each other.
Donc en fait, ça c'est un nouveau projet sur lequel ils travaillent. Ils ont à la base interrogé des personnes pour savoir leur réaction par rapport à l'obscurité, les peurs que cela peut engendrer, le sentiment d'inconfort. En fait, s'ils travaillent dans un endroit où il y a très peu de lumière, et ils ont pris le problème à l'envers, en fait, qu'est-ce que ça fait quand on est dans le noir et qu'on n'a pas cette possibilité d'avoir la lumière, parce que maintenant on est tellement habitué au fait d'avoir de la lumière partout où on va qu'on est un petit peu trop gâté et qu'on a l'impression que c'est quelque chose de normal, alors qu'il y a des endroits sur plusieurs continents où la lumière c'est pas quelque chose de logique d'avoir la ligne d'appuyer sur un bouton et d'avoir directement à proximité une source de lumière. Donc du coup là il n'y a que des photos de Wayne et de Kathleen parce qu'ils ne voulaient pas montrer les photos en fait des amis qu'ils ont invités à participer au projet qui était un petit peu gênante.
So the deep dark, at least the version that we built in the forest, in the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, at the Banff Centre in Canada, was a series of gateways.
Yeah, so again, as I was saying, it's this concept where you create something to make the darkness darker. So as you pass through the gateway, the light is directed in one direction. And as you're walking towards it, it's very bright, and on the other side, it's almost complete darkness. There's no, there's maybe a little bit of starlight or a bit of moonlight, but nothing else. And so you're temporarily blinded as your eyes are forced to adjust. And it's in these spaces where we integrated audio components from the interviews. So you have people giving their testimony about their feelings on darkness, but speaking in very comfortable voices because they're in a comfortable space while they're talking about these things, like the threat of a bear in the woods or some nostalgic childhood experiences with darkness.
Yeah. And so it was essentially like you're moving through a narrative as you're moving through the darkness, and as you're being blinded, that's specifically when the audio components of the deep dark begin to speak to you from the woods as voices in the woods, which is sort of a terrifying thing when you think about it. But they're speaking about the darkness. So there's this level of remove wherein you're forced to really confront your situation in a different way.
Donc là, le projet, c'est en fait, les gens sont invités à passer à travers des espèces de portails qui permettent soit de mettre l'environnement plus lumineux ou plus sombre. Et il y a aussi une partie audio qui a été intégrée à ce projet. Et du coup, en fait, c'est les interviews des personnes qui passent en même temps qu'on passe à travers les portes. Donc c'est des personnes qui parlent du coup de l'obscurité, de leurs sentiments par rapport à l'obscurité. Et les personnes en fait sont complètement mises en relation avec la forêt qui est autour et ils entendent en même temps ces gens parler, donc c'est un côté un petit peu rassurant, mais en même temps ils se passent dans la forêt qui peut être quelque chose qui peut être assez effrayant, surtout en pleine obscurité comme ça. Et du coup c'est vraiment pour voir la relation que les gens ont par rapport à l'obscurité et si entendre les choses autour c'est un peu comme des voix venant de la forêt, est-ce que ça a un effet positif ou négatif par rapport à la vision qu'on a quand on est dans l'obscurité.
We had a video to show you, but I don't think
Okay.
that's it. That's fine. The interesting thing about that work is that as you pass through these doorways, from an outsider's point of view, you completely disappear. So you're bathed in light, you're blinded, and then as you move through the doorway, you disappear into the darkness. So you're completely gone. And so we installed this work a second time in an urban setting, which changed everything contextually already. But people were using the deep dark as a portal and taking videos of each other disappearing into the darkness.
Yeah, it really has that effect where just by the contrast of your eye, as soon as they've gone through the gate, you can't see them on the other side, which is a really sort of ominous and fascinating image.
Ce projet du coup a été transporté dans un espace urbain Et quand on voit le projet de loin, en fait, on a l'impression que quand les gens passent à travers les portes, ils disparaissent. Donc c'est un effet de contraste qui a été créé de façon voulue. Et du coup, il y a plein de personnes qui prenaient des vidéos en fait, qui trouvaient ça assez comique de voir les gens disparaître en passant les différents portails dans le tunnel.
That's almost the end for us. These are things that we're interested in right now. We're still working on our project about darkness. We've got a residency in northern Canada, the Yukon Territory, in November. So we'll be spending all of November in a place where the sun may never rise. And so that will be a perfect place to expose the darkness a little bit further. But these are the things that we are keeping in our head constantly moving forward. You need to list of them. Yeah, but we're interested in hearing about you too. So if you have any thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear.
Donc si vous avez des questions à poser. Je travaille sur un autre projet en fait qui vont commencer à partir du mois de novembre où ils vont être amenés à aller plus au nord du Canada où il n'y a quasiment pas de lumière parce que c'est des endroits en fait c'est tellement reculé que la lumière apparaît que à certains moments de la journée et très peu d'heures. Donc du coup ça va leur permettre de penser encore à d'autres projets possibles et du coup les thématiques là c'est les thématiques sur lesquelles ils se rapportent le plus pour dans le but de nouveaux projets. Je ne sais pas si vous avez des questions, des idées qui vous viennent.
Yes, and many other things we have done. I went to art school and Wayne went to school as a machinist and a musician as well. But I feel like being a professional artist really means that you're constantly doing many things. And many things outside of obviously what we're showing you as well. So sometimes I'll be a professional photographer for various events. And Wayne will be hired out for various fabrication things.
Yeah, or for different objects and these sorts of things as well.
Yeah, but I mean, each one of those skills comes in handy, I think, also, even though they feel like a distraction at the time.
À la base, c'était sur une école d'art et Wayne a plus été sur la côté un peu ingénierie au niveau de tout ce qui est métal, pouvoir travailler sur les structures. Et il a fait aussi de la musique. Donc il me disait que en fait, même si voilà, comme ça a l'air d'être une distraction ce qu'ils font comme métier, ils font aussi d'autres choses à côté qui ont son rapport avec leur projet. Kevin est aussi, elle prend beaucoup de photos. Wayne est aussi amené des fois à participer au niveau de création de son, au niveau des films. Ils continuent de faire ce qu'à la base ils faisaient, tout en progressant sur leur projet.
Did we answer too many things without you even asking questions?
Vous avez abordé le lieu en fait, de la passerelle, parce que j'ai l'impression que surtout les installations sont un peu des cadres, il y a plus d'opportunités, alors que ça, j'ai pas eu très étonné, est-ce que c'est un souci pour eux
hard to work with space, but it's really cool light, or if it wasn't probably pretty well. Est-ce que c'est un truc qui...
I would say that it's actually not brighter than a lot of the places that we've worked in, to be fair.
Have you chosen the place, or it's just given to you?
Yeah, it was given to us. Actually, the first time Maintenant approached us, they were going to put us in the church that is now a theater.
At the end,
Yeah, which would have been really cool to be inside that space. But I think that Maintenant really started also that they really wanted to put us in a functional space. So something that was free and accessible so that the work could be in some ways utilized as a beacon for this festival at large. So something that was very accessible, where multiple age ranges are included, and then also where people don't have to pay pay to see the work, which for us at least is like those are all things that we're really interested in. Like those are each one of those is something that we really value a lot. But do you want to speak to the
Yeah, le montant de lumière là, c'est pas si pire pour nous. C'est parfois qu'on a des places avec le même niveau de lumière, mais nous, dans les autres fêtes, quand nous exhibons, il y a beaucoup de travaux là, ou d'autres là, qui ont besoin d'espaces vraiment obscurés, comme les projections, tout ça. Donc, pour nous, ça peut être exhibité dans l'espace avec un peu de lumière, etc.
Donc à la base, c'est pas un endroit du tout qu'ils ont choisi, c'est vraiment un endroit qui leur a été imposé. Et du coup, ils ont dû faire en sorte que ce soit que ça fonctionne avec leur projet. Et le but, c'était vraiment que ce soit dans un espace qui soit accessible au public, qui soit complètement gratuit et que les gens puissent venir directement au projet. Eux, ils ont vu l'espace où il y a l'église, en fait, plus au niveau de Sainte-Anne, et quelqu'un disait que ça aurait été sympa de travailler à l'intérieur même de l'église et que du coup, ça soit vraiment dans l'obscurité tout le temps. Et du coup, là, comme l'endroit leur a été c'était cet endroit-là où ils fait d'autres endroits parce que c'est quand même une place qui est très passante. Du coup, ils ont dû faire en sorte que ça marche même avec la luminosité autour, mais c'est pas, pour eux, c'est pas un problème parce qu'ils ont été amenés à travailler avec des endroits au milieu.
We're taking up for work experience.
Oh, perhaps, yeah, next time we're in
You can
France.
carry our cloud.
Yeah.
So we want to actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be fun. A number of people have asked us over the years if we could take on an intern or something like that, and it's just like, yeah, it's very complicated.
I think also
But we'd love to have you.
yeah, living in Canada can be quite challenging, but I mean, if you'd like to give us your contact or something, we can certainly talk about it afterwards.
Anybody else want to send us their resume?
D'accord. Merci beaucoup d'être venu.